refer people to the Missouri Preservation website for resources and recommendations.
Thanks. I was going to start to say that sidetrack, but that's
Yeah.
a really good website. It's a good resource.
Yes, so thank you very much, Deb. And now I'd like to introduce Nadia McMichael. And we've never met before, but I very much appreciate you coming to participate in this preservation symposium. When Bob Dixon talked to me about his vision for the preservation symposium, he wanted to have a workshop for investors and developers with people from the banking community. And I believe that it was Bob who approached you about doing this. And so you came down from St. Louis today, and she leads a team of tax credit services. So you have at least 2 people who also specialize, 4 people under you who specialize in this. So, well, I didn't know that because, well, I'm an architectural historian. I work for the state. I don't deal with the money side of things at all. And as we've mentioned before, don't come to us for tax advice or how to leverage your tax credits, because that's not our area of expertise. We just try to stay in our lane. So I'm very much looking forward to Nadia's talk about that side of things. So thank you very much. So the clicker. The clicker's on that side. You can stand on either side.
So I hit the down button to go to the, okay. I have a quick question. Show of hands. How many of you are hearing all this information for the first time? Pat yourselves on the back. It's been a long day, hasn't it? I know I've sat through these symposiums throughout my career, and they are long and grueling, but I'm going to try to make this quick and painless and go through this. Our department at Commerce Bank is here to make things easy. We don't want to overcomplicate an already complicated process. So as you guys know, we're Commerce Bank. You may have heard of us, very large regional bank here based in St. Louis and Kansas City, dual headquartered. The Tax Credit Services Department has been around since 2001. So we have been purchasing state tax credits for over 20 years. We have a considerable amount of experience working with this kind of program. So we are a team of 3 people. We're small but mighty. We have a 4th person as well. It's more of an administrator. So you have me, Nadia McMichael. I have been working with tax credits since 2007. I actually graduated from SMS. That's what I call it. I know it's supposed to be Missouri State, but it's SMS to me. That's where I graduated from. So I graduated in 2000 and took my first job at Commerce Bank. And then in 2007, I landed in the tax credit department and kind of got in my blood. And I left the bank in 2012, went to go work with New Markets tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, and my heart was in historic tax credits. So I came back in 2022 to run the tax credit services department here at Commerce Bank. Then we have Elijah Rollins. Elijah has been with our department since August of last year, so we're coming up on a year. He had about 5 years of experience working with the federal historic tax credit program, so he's been a great resource for us. And then we have Peggy Stepp. Peggy has been in our department for 10 years. She's been with the bank for 30. People love to talk to Peggy, and I will get into why here in a second. She runs operations. So we started working with credits in Missouri and Kansas initially. And as the bank evolved and grew into other states, we did as well. And as other states took on the state historic tax credit programs, we evolved with that as well. So now we are active purchasers in 9 different states: Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And then we have these kind of weird outliers, Colorado and Massachusetts. And don't ask me why, but we can purchase credits in Massachusetts. So very active, very well known in the industry, specifically in the Midwest. So as you guys have learned ad nauseum probably today, The state historic tax credit is 25% of what? Anybody? QRE, qualified rehab expense. So, and now as Deb went through earlier today with new legislation, we're looking at potentially a 35% state historic tax credit as well. So that's really good news, and we're all of us in the industry are excited to see that. In addition, so the state tax credit can be used to offset ordinary income, or it can be sold to third parties, me or someone like me that has the appetite to purchase this type of credit. So in addition to that, you've got the federal historic tax credit program. The federal credit is worth 20% of qualified rehab expense. So after project completion, you've done your part one, you've done your part two, you now have this beautiful building that has been rehabbed, the examples that Deb showed. When you are done and you submit your part three, the State Historic Preservation Office is going to review that, and then they're going to issue you a tax credit certificate, and it's going to look like this. So that's what you will receive at the end of your project. This is kind of like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. When he finds the golden ticket, this is money. So I'd say in my department, we see between 300 to 500 of these a year from different states. We do a lot of work in Missouri, so we are very familiar with this form. So you say, okay, you know, I got this tax credit certificate. Now what do I do with it? Basically, all you're going to do is this tax credit certificate, put it in an email and send it to me. I talked earlier about Peggy. Peggy handles operations. So she will take this certificate and she will work with the state to transfer it out of your name into Commerce Bank's name. Once that certificate gets transferred into our name, we wire you funds. So we're purchasing the credit from you, and that's the process. So it is, as a standalone, just buying the state historic tax credit is a pretty simple process. You guys have done the hard part. We come in and we buy the credit from you. So I'm going to stop here with questions. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Is that purchase a lump sum, or is it also over 5 years?
No. It's, we buy this lump sum. It's not, this is a transferable state tax credit. It's certificated, so we buy the whole thing up front. Yep.
So it basically becomes developer.
Yes, exactly. That's right. So it's pretty simple. Like I said, you just get the certificate and then you find a purchaser to buy the credit. So we purchase at a discounted rate. Usually I get that question, you know, what rate will you purchase my credit for? We are in the high 80s, low 90s. The smaller the credit, the lower the price. The higher the amount of the credit, the higher the price. So we're purchasing it at maybe a 10% discount.
Is there any relationship between Commerce Bank as a lender and Commerce Bank?
You're a step ahead of me.
Okay.
So yeah, and then I do want to say this too, that the process of transferring the certificate out of your name into our name is usually 10 to 14 days, depending on what's going on with the state. A lot of people ask, you know, how long is this going to take? But it's pretty quick, relatively speaking. So, anyway, moving on to the next point here. And I need to preface this by saying Commerce Bank has been around for 160 years for a reason. We are incredibly risk adverse. So we do not get involved with bridge loans or federal historic tax credits. We are state tax credit purchasers only. We do work with a lot of other partners of ours, bridge lenders and federal historic tax credit investors that are in the deal with us. So if you get to that point and you decide you want to get a bridge loan or you want to work with a federal investor, we can always make those introductions for you. So with bridge loans, the state tax credit equity can come in upfront in the form of a bridge loan. So basically, lenders in this space will say, okay, we like credit, we like Commerce Bank, we like their credit rating. We know that they have a strong reputation in this industry. We know that if we do a bridge loan and use the state tax credits as collateral, if Commerce Bank is the purchaser, my lending institution is going to get paid down. So in that example earlier where I showed you the certificate, you get your certificate, you send it to me, and then I pay your bridge lender down. So that bridge loan that comes in up front gets paid down at certificate issuance. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the bridge loan piece. The federal credit's a little different than the state historic tax credit. Federal credits can only be allocated. They cannot be, they're not sold and certificated the way that the state tax credit is. So the federal historic tax credits are worth 20% of QRE. And you have to have an investor enter into the partnership and stay 99.9% owner of the real estate for at least 5 years. That's per the compliance period set forth by the IRS. So usually federal investors are, they put their equity in at certain benchmarks along the way. They'll put in some equity in at closing, some equity in at stabilization, some equity in at placed in service. There's a 2.5% priority return on their equity and a 5% exit fee at the end of the project to get them out. So typical players in the federal space are going to be your larger banks, JP Morgan Chase, US Bank, PNC, and then there are syndication groups throughout the country that do this as well. So we work with all of them. And I also have to say, federal investors are not going to be interested in a project unless there's an excess amount of $2 million in credits or above. So you're going to have a project with $10 million worth of QREs in order to warrant their attention. So your federal historic tax credits, we talked a little bit earlier about CPAs. I would highly recommend you talk to a CPA about liquidating your federal credits if that amount is under $2 million. So, but when it comes to the state tax credit, we'll buy those all day long. So, yeah, I said I would make this short and sweet, and it's pretty. I know it can be overwhelming and feel kind of cumbersome working through the financing piece of tax credits. But like I said, we've been doing this for years. We are very familiar with this process. So we're happy to help. We can always make the introductions, like I said, to bridge lenders and federal investors and walk you through the process. So that's really all I have. I'm going to stop there. It can get a little bit confusing, but I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah.
The $2 million ceiling threshold. Do you ever work with developers that group projects? Like I've got one right now that's got like three projects almost side by side. They're going to be over that $2 million mark.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever do package deals for smaller projects like that?
I actually, Jake Sanders. So I know that Jake at one point, he's a CPA here that works with tax credit projects. It was like a small deal fund where there were multiple investors entered into a fund together and they wound up being the investors in the project. But that's the only way I've seen it done. The other way I see it done is, you get a high net worth individual or someone who is got a lot of federal tax liability and they can take those credits. There's a 1-year carry back and a 20-year carry forward on the federal credits. So theoretically, if you have an investor entered into your project, that investor could theoretically not pay taxes for 20 years, depending on how much you get in federal credits. That would offset their federal tax liability. So that's the only way I really know how it can be done. So, and like I said, I'm not a CPA or an attorney. I can't give tax advice, but that's what I've heard.
So on that follow-up, you were saying that you guys will pay a higher rate on credits for a bigger project.
Mm-hmm.
Get that right? So would you do a higher rate on state credits if it's a 3-building?
It depends on what the credit amount would be. So for a point of reference, so, we'll buy any size credit. So if it's, a $10,000 tax credit, we might give 85 cents, something like that. I am working on 2 very large projects right now in St. Louis. Those credit or the QRE amounts on those projects are in excess of 200 million. So they're very, very large projects, and I'm not offering more than 93 cents on the dollar for those. So that's kind of market price right now for state credits. Federal credits, like I said, there's a structure that goes along with it, but I'd say federal credits right now, if they're at that $2 million threshold, I'm seeing 83 to 85. So on the federal credits.
So it wouldn't do my small project clients any good to package 3 million QREs, it's gonna vary.
Well, I mean,
Between $1 million in QREs for 3 separate projects versus $3 million pack.
for federal credits or states?
State.
State, well, we would maybe be within a penny or half a penny sometimes. Yeah, yeah. I think I have more slides here. This is just some example projects that we have worked on where we purchase credits throughout the state, not just in Springfield, but you know, it's a statewide program. Anybody in the state can receive these credits. So we're active purchasers of anyone who has them. So, and like I said, if you guys have any questions or if you need help, yeah, absolutely. We're here to help you.
Oglesby was HTC and LITEC, is that correct?
So you're just going there.
I don't remember. Honestly, I don't know.
I'm just asking how you work with the combinations of.
Oh, so if there is, you know, obviously the state tax credit can be layered with a lot of different programs, other programs. So the LITEC program and so on and so forth. We work with syndicators and other LITEC investors for programs that are, or for projects that have the layered tax credit components. So like we work with Sugar Creek Capital. They're oftentimes partnered with us on projects that have low-income housing tax credits as well as historic tax credits.
And other DED tax credit programs?
So in Missouri, we have a variety of different programs that we'll work with. We work with the Brownfield Credit, Neighborhood Preservation Tax Credits, MDFB tax credits. There are a number of them that we work with that the bank has approved, and that there's some pretty strict guidelines on what types of credits we can purchase. So it has to be transferable and it has to be bifurcatable. So like I said, those historic is the bulk of what we do. And then we've got those other programs that we definitely have to go ahead and to purchase.
Sorry, what does bifurcatable in this context mean?
Meaning that once you purchase it, you can split it up and sell it to other parties.
Oh,
So really what we do, the bank does, is we purchase the credit, and because we're 30 billion in assets, we have huge tax liability. We use that credit to offset what we owe in state tax liability. And if we purchase an excess amount, we then sell it back out to high net worth individuals through our trust company, or we'll sell it to a CPA firm that represents large institutions, think distributor, health insurance companies, things like that. So there is, you know, there's a couple, you got to follow the bouncing ball there. There's a reason for this, but yeah, that's the reason we got into it, was tax savings for us. Yeah. A minimum. I get calls all the time. People say, I got a $40,000 tax credit certificate. Can you buy that? Absolutely. The answer is always yes.
If the new state statute allows like nonprofits to sell these, like I've only ever worked with LITEC and app tax credits. Sometimes you get stuck with an app tax credit, and that's worth 50 to 70%. And then like LITEC's a whole different thing. When I hear 20 to 35%, like that doesn't sound like, that sounds like a worse tax credit than someone's giving a donation for like an app, you know, for neighborhood assistance program. Like, is there any risk of like if a nonprofit were to apply for is that they wouldn't be able to sell the tax credits? Like is there like risk of that market?
No, not at all. And the state historic tax credit is there specifically to be equity in the project at the end. But I get what you're saying about the NAP credits and the LITECs, but they're a completely different animal. You know, it's not like a certificated credit like this, like you get at the end of the project after you've submitted your part 3. So, yeah.
Who else buys tax credits? Are you guys like the only player out there, or is it a competitive thing? Can I get different rates from different?
Yeah, so I mean, it is competitive. We are not the only player in the space. We do kind of lead the market in the Midwest. Everyone knows us. We have a very strong reputation. The legislation that I was talking about earlier, we were heavily involved in helping craft that. So I think people know that we're an industry leader and very involved in that space. I do get the question, and a lot of people will call me up and say, I have this $50,000 tax credit certificate. Can you give me 97 cents? And I'm like, okay, hold on. And then they'll say, well, I'm going to go shop this if you're not going to give me what I'm asking. And I say, fine, by all means, go ahead. That's fair. They usually come back and they usually say, I found a CPA who's going to give me one more penny than you will, but they want you to teach them how to do it. So you get what you pay for. So that's truly, I'm not saying, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that our competing organizations don't know what they're doing, but there are a lot of people out there, just like Deb was talking about, you got to verify your source. There are people out there that will say that they're going to buy their tax credit buy tax credits from you because they have someone who they can sell it to, but then they have to find the person who's going to sell it. They don't have that buyer lined up. So it winds up, you're holding that certificate. That's time value of money. If you don't sell it right when you get it, then you're holding it. And you're waiting for the CPA firm to figure out who they're going to sell it to. It's this trickle down effect. If you sell it to us, we're going to buy it and we're going to fund you, and the rest of it's our problem. So, but yeah, like US Bank is a big player. We partner with them on some larger projects to show community initiative on larger deals. We would partner with US Bank. I'm trying to think who else. It's random CPA firms that'll buy the credits. So yeah. That's a good question.
Did you say you make the deal to buy the credits at the beginning?
So we usually like to be in early because it's one of those pieces that if you're going to do if you're going to do a project like this, you want to have your buyer lined up so that we're ready to go at the end of the project when the certificate gets issued. Especially if you're going to use a bridge lender. The bridge lender, that when you're building your capital stack at the beginning of the project and you're finding your construction loan, your senior debt, you want to get your bridge lender lined up so you can get that state tax credit equity up front. And the bridge lender won't loan unless they know that they're going to have a reputable, strong credit rated buyer to purchase that credit and then pay them down. So we do like to be involved up front for that reason. So yeah, that's a good question. Do you have something?
Yeah. Regarding the bridge loan, Commerce is known as extraordinarily risk averse, I understand. Yes. But in abstract, for a decently sized bank that surely has the tax liability and reason to get credits, is there any reason why they would be disincentivized or potentially carrying liability if they were to make a deal with you for the tax credits and also themselves supply the bridge loan? In other words, be your lender all the way around and your tax credit buyer.
No, there are some banks that do that.
Okay.
I think Enterprise Bank does that. They don't do it as often, and they're not as well known in the space as we are, but I think they have the ability to do all the pieces. But then that's also reflected in the price. They're going to do that bridge loan and they know they're going to be the buyer of the credits. They're their own takeout. So they're going to price their credits lower. That makes sense. So hey, we're going to do this bridge loan, but we're going to buy those credits at 80 cents on the dollar, not 90 or 91 or 92, or depending on what we would offer. So you kind of have to weigh that cost benefit analysis. So great questions, you guys. This is awesome. I love this. Yeah. So what else? Anything else I can help clarify for you guys?
By the time it comes to you,
Mm-hmm.
already been finished with DED completely at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's your reward for all this hard work you've done. Yeah. So, but again, feel free. I've got cards up here. If you guys want to take those and keep our information, this is going to be on the slides. So feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we're happy to help in any way.
Thank you so much, Nadia. And thanks you to all of you. It was great to have such an enthusiastic and interested audience. And thank you again to Bob Dixon for hosting this, and to the entire County Commission staff for all of their technical assistance running all this AV. And we all have our cards on the table if you'd like to take a collection of business cards. Please reach out to us, call or email Shippo if you have any questions. And also we can provide copies of our PowerPoint presentations as well. And you can get those by, I think if you email Megan Applegate. All right, well, thank you all again.
And just a word of thanks to Elizabeth and all of the presenters. Thank you so much for making this possible. Thank you for reaching out earlier this year. And a special thanks to Nadia. I know you probably mentioned this before I got back, but she covers 9 states. And when Elizabeth and I were talking, it was very clear that we needed to decide which of the business people we were going to pick because the state did not want to be making that choice. And so really appreciate you doing that. I had reached out to our local commerce affiliate because they had handled the tax credits on a project that my wife and I did 20-something years ago. And so it was really much appreciated that you came and presented. I ran out of business cards. So I don't have any over here, but if you need to contact us at the county, it's bdixon, Dixon, at greencountymo.gov. And remember, green has an E on the end. Thank you all so much. And we'll have this available soon. And if you need to get a hold of it, just feel free to reach out by email. Thanks again.
When he says this available soon, he means on YouTube with a link on your website.
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.